The Discombobulator, a sound weapon, perhaps Havana syndrome. Trump just recently, as of February 13th, hailed the U.S.'s Discombobulator as he meets with Maduro op troops. President Donald Trump boasted Friday about a secret U.S. Discombobulator weapon that can block Russian and Chinese defense systems as he met the elite troops who captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. You remember that perhaps blood was coming from the faces of the Venezuelan soldiers, and that we had that kind of suspicious interview with someone who was on the ground on Venezuela's side saying that they were all bleeding out of their faces and none of their machinery worked. I thought it was propaganda, but who knows? I think these things do exist, but we're going to lead up to Havana syndrome news through the Discombobulator. Trump's comments at the Fort Bragg military base in North Carolina marked the first time he has talked about the mysterious device at a public event after previously letting some details slip in interviews. They even talk about the Discombobulator because they never got a shot off, Trump told soldiers at the base, referring to the suppression of much of Venezuela's defensive systems during the January 3rd raid. The Russian equipment didn't work. The Chinese equipment didn't work. Everyone's trying to figure out why it didn't work. Someday you're going to find out, but it didn't work. Now, this Discombobulator sounds, from all the varying reports we've heard about it, sometimes the Discombobulator affects a human being and the way they hear, just the way they feel on the inside. It sounds like it could have been an LRAD device. Other times, like this one, it sounds like it affects electronic systems, defense systems. Trump, who was accompanied by his wife, Melania, addressed soldiers and military families before meeting the Special Forces troops involved in the raid. The stunning operation saw U.S. forces swoop in by helicopter under cover of darkness and capture then-President Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, from a highly secured compound in the Venezuelan capital. 83 people were killed and more than 112 people were injured in the assault, which began with U.S. bombing raids on Venezuelan military targets, Venezuelan officials said. No U.S. service members were killed, but Trump said 3 helicopter pilots were injured. Maduro is now in detention. How does that happen if none of the weapons went off or anything? Curious. Maybe someone got something off. Maduro is now in detention in the United States, facing charges of drug trafficking and other crimes, just eating shawarma, I assume. We heard from the Epstein files that there was talk of him being part of the op from the U.S. side. Would not surprise me. To which he has pleaded not guilty. His next court hearing is scheduled for March 17th in New York. It's coming up. Just a little under a month away. Trump approved. What outfit will he wear? I'm sure that's all they'll talk about. Will he wear the Nike sweatsuit? Trump approved former Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to replace her deposed boss Maduro on the condition that she comply with his demands on access to oil and on easing state repression. I'm just so over being the police of the world. Trump approved the vice president, but it's a regime change for you. The U.S. president has repeatedly hailed the Maduro operation as an example of the country's military might as he asserts Washington's right to dominate its backyard. Trump has previously made brief references to the so-called Discombobulator without giving many details. I'm not allowed to talk about it, Trump said in an interview last week with NBC News, but let me just tell you, you know what it does? None of their equipment works. That's what it does. Everything, this is a quote from Trump, everything was discombobulated. I mean, and such is 2026, the year of discombobulation. Well, the etymology dates back to 1834 for the word discombobulate. It's a word I'm quite fond of. And that etymology from 1834 goes back to it meaning to upset or to embarrass. It's a great word. Absolutely great word. Which brings me to this rather embarrassing situation. Scientists, if my computer wants to load here, I feel like I have to hit it with a hammer. Scientist gives himself brain damage by testing secret audio weapon on himself in attempt to disprove the Havana syndrome. This is from yesterday. In the Daily Mail. A scientist in Norway gave himself brain damage after testing an experimental weapon designed to disprove the existence of Havana syndrome. Making sure I'm recording here. Obviously a little bit different of a setup, but trying to make it look and sound a bit better. You guys let me know if it sounds a little better. I'll try not to gulp from my coffee too much, but there's no guarantees. Sorry. A scientist in Norway gave himself brain damage. After testing with the Havana syndrome device, working in a top secret research project in 2024, the unidentified government scientist constructed a device capable of emitting powerful pulses of microwave radiation. The skeptical researcher tested the device on himself to prove that its effects would be harmless. However, this guy had no conspiracy theorist friends, obviously. However, according to the Washington Post, the researcher soon developed symptoms of the mysterious disease that has struck down diplomats around the world. Reportedly, the Norwegian government told the CIA about the secretive experiments and their disastrous results. That prompted 2 visits to Norway from Pentagon and White House officials to inspect the device, believed to have been built with materials stolen from a foreign government. We reported on that at the end of last year. The latest development is yet more evidence for the theory that so-called pulsed energy devices can affect the human body and may have been used on U.S. officials. However, an official familiar with the situation, it's one of the greatest, I'm being facetious, clauses in all of journalism. An official familiar with the situation. What does that mean? Look, sometimes you want to keep your sources anonymous for their own safety. In a situation like this, you can understand why. Sometimes it's like the journalist is just making stuff up. So my favorite being, years ago when they were talking about Trump in some article, might have been the New York Times. Sources familiar with Trump's thinking. It could be anyone. It could be me. It could be you. However, an official familiar with the situation claims that the Norwegian scientist's symptoms are not an exact match for a classic case of Havana syndrome. Havana syndrome is an unexplained condition with severe symptoms, including headaches, dizziness, ringing in the ears, and cognitive difficulties. It is so called because the first reported cases occurred in 2016 when officials at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba, began reporting strange cognitive symptoms. Since then, Havana syndrome has been reported in more than 15 countries, including Russia, China, India, Colombia, the U.S., and the U.K. Officially, the U.S. government recognizes these conditions as anomalous health incidents, but some have suggested another theory. According to some, Havana syndrome is a result of a deliberate attack on U.S. officials using a pulsed energy weapon similar to the one created by the Norwegian scientists. The idea is that these weapons could harness powerful bursts of electromagnetic energy to silently and remotely inflict brain damage on their targets. Mute button, did it work? All right, I'm going to try doing that more often. I think about you from time to time, you see? Responsibility for these supposed attacks has typically been attributed to Russia, which has a decades-long history of research into direct energy weapons. We'll get into that in just a minute. However, there is no evidence to suggest that any Russian research has been successful, and Moscow denies involvement. Previously, it had been suggested that this type of pulse energy weapon was either impossible to construct or would not produce the set of symptoms described by embassy staff. However, the fact that a Norwegian research program has replicated at least some of the results suggests otherwise. According to the Washington Post, those aware of the test say it does not prove that AHIs are the work of foreign adversaries. However, this revelation is yet more reason to think that these weapons could be a serious concern. You think? Through the fog, above the tree line, I can almost spot the satellite targeting me directly, blasting me with microwaves, radiated microwave beams right into my face. I mean, you can see it happen in real time, right? Maybe there's another one over there. Another one over there. You guys look up into the sky. Check it out. You'll see. Look, there's a long and documented history of targeted individuals, especially when it comes to surveillance and MK Ultra. We know that. Am I that special to warrant such surveillance? No, but I think they've outsourced so much of the spyware and the sonic weapons to AI and satellites that it's so automated that they just blanket anybody with like a keyword. Anyone who talks about it, just blast them right in the molar with the microwave radiation and just see what happens. Anyway, according to CNN and independent journalist Sasha Ingber, the device was purchased in the final days of the Biden administration from an unknown seller. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Hunter Biden. The Defense Department has spent more than a year testing the device, which reportedly contains some Russian-made components. Around the same time, a now declassified report from the U.S. National Intelligence Council stated that 2 spy agencies changed their mind on whether a foreign adversary could cause Havana syndrome. Okay, we've read that before. The document said that new reporting had led 2 agencies to shift their assessments about whether a foreign actor has a capability that could cause biological effects consistent with some of the symptoms reported as AHIs. I mean, you can go look at documented reports about just smaller LRAD devices, the sonic weapons they use to disperse protesters. And you can go look up people being blasted with those, or just people experimenting with them, or people, journalists going out to see what it feels like. Go on YouTube, check it out. They say it feels like their blood is boiling. So you can imagine if they ramp this up, use a satellite dish or some other device that they're outside in the car with, which has been there's been reports of people with it in their cars. I think there was an arrest in Florida a few years ago with someone who might have had a device that they said was also made in Russia. But again, it could be propaganda to blame it all on Russia, because it's like we're building it here, I think, obviously, as well. They're all building it. Where did I leave off? There is growing speculation that the U.S. may have acquired their own version of a pulse energy device since that report was published. An anomalous account of the U.S. raid on Venezuela, purportedly from one of Maduro's bodyguards, said that a sound knocked security staff off their feet. There you go. But let's see. See what's happening here, though? If we're just going to get into put our journalism hats on, they haven't used a quote. It's not a direct quote from this. Let me read that last sentence again. An anomalous account, which they meant to say, first of all, should say anonymous. An anonymous account of the U.S. raid on Venezuela, purportedly from one of Maduro's bodyguards, said that a sound knocked security staff off their feet. What they're doing there is referencing the thing I just talked about, that what seemed like propaganda to me. I read it to you guys when it came out, and our secretary, the press secretary, also retweeted that post from this bodyguard. There is no way to identify it as a true source. There's nothing in quotation marks here, but the journalist from here in the Daily Mail is using it as a reference to support these claims of pulse energy devices, the Discombobulator that Trump's talking about, where he's mostly talked about the Discombobulator being this thing that affects devices like machinery, electronics. There's also been reports that it has affected people. So to me, it sounds like if we're I don't really believe that bodyguard thing is real. I think that's propaganda. That doesn't mean I don't believe that they've built something like a Discombobulator. I do believe in the Havana syndrome, and there's just a long history of reported cases of it. And we'll get into some of that. But it seems like they've built something much bigger now. Doesn't mean the machine is bigger. Perhaps they have to carry it on a helicopter or 3 helicopters. But they're using this now in the journal. It's just interesting to see how these things wind up as just being objective truth. They do use the word purportedly in that. So it's giving them, they know that there's no basis for the source. There's no source that you can actually look to, point to, and credit with this. It was just an anonymous tweet that went viral, and then our press secretary retweeted. So it's just interesting to me. You have to be so, when you're reading this stuff and you care about it, and a lot of people out there getting emotional about all these things. And this is not just unique to the strange stories we go through on this show. This happens in all of politics all the time. And they do this. They pick something that might have been fake, or something that was said from a politician that they heard from someone else that was totally fake. Scott Adams used to do a great job of breaking down the almost human centipede quality of a quote, of a false quote, and how it could wind up first it's sparked maybe on a tweet or in some article, and then it's picked up by a politician, and then it's said on the Senate floor or in a congressional hearing, and then you see it later aired on mainstream news, or it's in a newspaper the next day, or on a podcast later that day or the next day. And then it just becomes real. Something that was fake just becomes real. You speak it into existence. And that's just one of those examples. I just want to put that out there. Not that important. Actually, no, take that back. I think it's really important. I think it's really important how closely we have to read some things. Everything. But it's tiresome. It's tiresome because it is absolutely everything. The account shared on social media by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, "Suddenly I felt like my head was exploding from the inside." Okay, you remember this. "We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting. We fell to the ground, unable to move." Trump has told the New York Post that he is not allowed to talk about the discombobulator. It is not clear whether this could refer to a pulse energy weapon like those believed to cause Havana syndrome, or a long-range acoustic device, or an LRAD, which incapacitates people using powerful sound waves. What is this here? The unexplained condition is known as Havana syndrome because the first case is affected. Okay, we know this. We know that symptoms do include, if you don't know, hearing loss, severe headaches, memory issues, dizziness, brain injury. I think I said that earlier. So I don't know what that is. The next article is about a abandoned sewer line found under DC prompts lane closures. All right. I do have more Havana syndrome stuff, but it just seems like how Adam Schiff gets to work in DC. Just quickly, just humor me from the Washington Examiner. There's so much poop news coming out of DC. I didn't use a pop filter, so I'm so sorry if my plosives are unbearable. Washington, D.C. workers discovered an abandoned sewer line over 100 years old at risk of collapse, prompting lane closures. Northbound 14th Street Northwest lanes between L Street and Thomas Circle were closed after the sewer line was discovered. The line was supposed to have been sealed with concrete half a century ago, but for unknown reasons wasn't. DC, that's so where does that money go? If someone approved money for all that, this is a big, I'm talking something we can probably walk in. And it's supposed to be sealed, or maybe the whole thing's not supposed to be filled with concrete, perhaps. Maybe it's just sealed off on either end, but still. Who was supposed to do that? Why didn't they do it? But DC Water warned of an imminent collapse. DC Water is having a heck of a 2026. Their sewage line has been massively discombobulated. You remember from the other day we talked about the 500 million gallons of water that are currently spilling into the Potomac. So they've cut off one spillage of the disgusting raw sewage spilling into the Potomac, but then there was another one that blew up because of wipes. Wipes caused a clog, and the clog caused some sort of backup, and it blew open the pipe, and now more poop is going into. But this is a crazy brick-lined sewer, really old. It looks like something you would see like Hillary Clinton hiding in as she's changing into her skin suit, trying to cover and tuck in her lizard tail, straight up. The street was initially closed out of an abundance of caution early Saturday morning due to the instability of the roadway under the weight of vehicular traffic. Subsequent engineering investigations have confirmed that urgent stabilization measures are required to prevent the roadway from collapsing and to ensure the safety of the public. A statement from DC Water said, "You're drinking poop. You might fall into a poop tunnel." It's just so indicative, so symbolic of the state of the capital of this great nation. The stabilization plan involves filling the 42-inch tunnel, or maybe it's not that big, with engineered material to support the roadway above and mitigate further risk. I guess this was filmed with a fisheye lens that they used to film Busta Rhymes music videos with. It looks huge. So they're going to fill it with engineered material to support the roadway above the and mitigate further risk. A process requiring specialized crews and equipment. They're going to use really small people. If it's really small, they're going to send in very small people. Perhaps Adam Schiff, or the people that are the extraterrestrials that are navigating Adam Schiff from inside his face. Because some of you will remember I have walked past Adam Schiff once in D.C. on the way into the Capitol. That was the closest I ever got to an extraterrestrial, or demon, as I like to say. But there was something behind his eyes, and it wasn't human. It wasn't human. Quick mute break. Look at that. Look at that. I am using technology. Anyway, that's happening. Let's get back to the Havana syndrome. So I have this from the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Havana syndrome, Americans affected by mysterious symptoms may struggle to get care. So this is from July 29th, 2024. Severe headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, tinnitus, vertigo. About a decade ago, American officials and their families living and working at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba, started experiencing mysterious symptoms like these. Symptoms usually followed a loud noise and intense pain in the ears and head. They weren't alone. Other Americans have also reported similar symptoms. They have sought medical treatment but struggled to access the care they need. Today's Watch blog post looks at our report on Havana syndrome and what's being done to help survivors. Okay. Although it's named Havana syndrome, okay, you guys know this. It started in Havana, but we've seen it all around the world. The number of victims is unknown, but as many as 334 Americans with relevant symptoms qualified for care in the military health system. Americans reporting symptoms were often federal employees in the intelligence community and various other agencies, as well as their families. They have reported experiencing symptoms in workplaces, residences, and even during daily commutes. While the reported signs and symptoms vary, in some cases their severity has led to lasting cognitive, sensory, and balance problems. There aren't definitive answers yet on what or who is causing the syndrome, also known as anomalous health incidents, AHIs. The CDC, NIH, and the National Academies of Sciences are all in on it and probably producing the machinery that causes Havana syndrome. That's just me subjectively adding to this article, but they say here the CDC, NIH, and the National Academies of Sciences are among the agencies and researchers looking for answers. They're probably making the problems. Like most things with the government, they want to study something, so they create the problem, and then they get to study it. Your health be damned. One study concluded it is very unlikely, it says, a foreign adversary is responsible for the abrupt onset location-dependent issues. Other studies note that some form of radio frequency energy or focused ultrasound could be causing the symptoms. I also wonder if some of the things that they forced you to take, if you're someone who has taken those things in the past 5 years, like the COVID vaccine, that has put stuff in you that is reactive to such things. I mean, I do not discredit that 5G stuff. I think 5G is weird. I've listened to a lot of people say, I mean, Wi-Fi is not supposed to be good for you. You know, that sounds crazy to people now, maybe. I think it's one of those things that in like 5 years, they'll be like, you know what? We didn't realize back then that it actually had a lot of issues, and we wish we warned the public more about like wrapping themselves in tinfoil or something. But seriously, this is obviously not unique to today. the idea of being blasted with microwave radiation, it goes back to the Cold War for sure, and worrying about Russia. It wasn't just the nukes. It was like, what else were they doing? Obviously, MK Ultra was born out of the Cold War as well, for the most part. Maybe started a little earlier, but we heard about Soviets supposedly brainwashing our own POWs. And they were like, you know what? Now we got to do it. But even there's discrepancy to those stories, that there's some people that say maybe we as in our government created those fears and that panic that the Soviets were doing it, so we can give an excuse to Alan Dulles, who was running the CIA at the time, to give us money to fund that. Like Sidney Gottlieb, the poisoner in chief, as they call him. Great book if you haven't read it. But Sidney Gottlieb was a chemist at the CIA looking to create a truth serum or some sort of drug that could create a superhuman Manchurian candidate that they could, activate and send into the field for assassinations or other things. And really quickly, if you haven't, this is what I did on Dr. Drew's show last week, just about that early history of MK Ultra. You can start at various places, and I think this is all very connected to Havana syndrome, because I think they can try to psychically steer you by they have what do they call it? Radio to skull. Is that what they call it? Technology, where they can kind of blast a voice into you. Perhaps it's out there. They've been working on it. I mean, it's not crazy. This is what they try to do. Anyway, before that, we started with MK Ultra, Sidney Gottlieb, a Jew from Brooklyn with a club foot, like Alan Dulles, who was a CIA director, also born with a club foot. And then we had, what was his name? I think Comba. I forget his last name. But he was a Nazi, another chemist who worked with like different diseases, human experimentation in Nazi Germany. So we hired him through Operation Paperclip. And so in a great pact of peace to destroy the human mind with acid and to perform mind control and create illusions, a Jew and a Nazi band together and do mind control. And through that, I think, is how we eventually get to Havana syndrome, or the heart attack guns that were so popular in the 70s. We found out about those with the Church Committee, COINTELPRO. Russians had them. We had them. And we've got other things now, obviously, like this satellite that's floating through the fog above my house right now, that at any moment could hit me with a beam of microwave radiation. It's all over. But it happened here. While questions remain about the origins, medical researchers agree that quick patient evaluation and treatment is essential for those suffering from Havana syndrome. And remember, this is a government website I'm reading from. Okay? While questions remain about the origins, we don't have to read that. Survivors we interviewed said that overall, they received inconsistent support from their employers when seeking treatment. We're not surprised here. If you've remember, we talked about the people from Area 51 who worked on these secret, very highly classified projects out there, who years later discovered that they all shared similar cancers or tumors that were huge, like grapefruit-sized tumors. They called this the invisible enemy that they blame on the classified projects that they were working on at Area 51. The one man said that he believes it altered his DNA, and that even that altered DNA passed on to his son, who was born with this horrible brain tumor. And they can't get help because the work they did was classified, which means their paperwork, their history is data masked, which means the VAs can't then go into the system and be like, oh yeah, you might have cancers because you worked with these weird chemicals, but there's no it says they worked at Area 51, but that's it. So they're looking to get help. I really hope they do. It's a really terrible story. There's hundreds of people that these men from Area 51 with the invisible enemy, hundreds of people they say have died from this. I think this is a lot like that, and a lot like why they're probably not getting help. Congress approved legislation that would provide survivors with care through the Department of Defense's military health system, but DoD has also reported delays in meeting timeframes for providing that care. Many patients we spoke with also said they struggled accessing care through the military health system, in part because they were unfamiliar with how it works. Okay, we don't get into the weeds with that, but I just want to give you that background here, that there is this official government website, the Government Accountability Office. This was written in 2024, so there's that. Now, I want you to hear this now, which is testimony from a CIA officer. Again, CIA, so let's just take it with a grain of salt. You know, he's saying things that I believe to be true, but it's pretty hard to believe CIA. Even when I see all these different podcasts and they have former CIA, you're never former CIA. Sorry, guys. You might say things that I agree with. You might sound cool sometimes, and you have some interesting information, but I'm always going to think Operation Mockingbird. I'm sorry. Not that sorry, though. You have to understand why we are skeptical of the CIA at all times, no matter if you're former or current. It's not to say everyone in the CIA is evil, but maybe 98%. They've done some pretty dubious things to the American public. But I found this. It's from March 9th, 2023, from the International Spy Museum's podcast, a place I'd like to go to someday. Sounds pretty interesting, but they linked up with this other podcast. I think is maybe it's through the Spy Museum, but they did a whole thing on Havana Syndrome. I listened to the first episode. Amazing. Really well done. Really good stuff. I just want to get the CIA guy's name. We've mentioned him briefly before on the show when talking about MK Ultra. Let's see here. Mark. Where's my Greek wife when I need her? Polymeropoulos. She'd say it way cooler, obviously, because she can say Greek things cooler than me. But let's listen to him. This is him now talking on The Sound, which is the podcast through the International Spy Museum, a series through the International Spy Museum. And he's talking about his trip to Moscow and what he experienced.
Take it back towards the Russians. And so what I had to do was go to Moscow for what we call area familiarization, which in essence is visiting the embassy, seeing the ambassador there. It was John Huntsman, who was a senior statesman, a superb ambassador. But I had to go get eyes on the ground there for a lot of reasons. I had to see what I was in charge of, but also for credibility as well. I had to go kind of take a trip there. So it was a 10-day trip. I believe it was on December 5th. I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't hear a sound, and everyone's story is different. I did not hear a sound per se, but I woke up with an incredible case of vertigo. The room was spinning. I felt physically sick. I had tinnitus, which is ringing in my ears, and it was pretty terrifying. And I say this after someone who'd spent almost 3 years in the war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, and been shot at more times than I had care to talk about. I ran a paramilitary base along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. We were in combat every day. This was the most terrifying experience of my life because I had lost total control. Something had happened. And it was the vertigo, the extreme vertigo, which is nothing like I'd ever experienced before. The next morning I woke up. I had contacted the embassy. We went to a local pharmacy to get some anti-nausea medication. We then went to St. Petersburg along with our, all of our trailing surveillance, which is totally normal. There's some Moscow veterans here, so they'll know all about that. Nothing unusual. I felt a little bit better, and then I returned to Moscow the night after, and it hit me again as I was sitting having dinner in the Pushkin Cafe, a famous restaurant in Moscow, when extreme vertigo hit me again, and then I kind of tried to survive the rest of the trip, crawled my way back onto to the airplane, and came home, and it started a pretty awful medical journey, and really fights with the CIA's Office of Medical Services, where when I came home, I asked to be seen and treated, and the answer from them was, nothing's wrong with you.
Sounds like the article we just went through.
This caused me to eventually retire after a medical journey, which again took me my own private doctors, spent thousands of dollars of my own money, and the Office of Medical Services, despite my repeated pleas, refused to give me treatment. I, of course, at that time had thought about what had happened to my colleagues in Cuba. I had begged to go to the University of Pennsylvania, which a lot of people know is where some of our officers from Cuba were being treated, and they said no. I finally retired in July of 2019, and at that time, some of my other colleagues were affected, and they were going to Walter Reed's Traumatic Brain Injury Center. It's called NICO. And even then, through my contacts at the agency, I was begging for medical care. It had gotten so bad I couldn't drive. I lost my long-distance vision. I had terrible brain fog, and when I finally made the decision to go public, it was via a journalist, Julia Yaffe. She's ill. She couldn't be here tonight, but I credit so much to her because she wrote an
Let's just hear one more. I just want to hear this last bit.
article about me in GQ magazine. The day it was published, 3 former CI directors called me, who I knew from my time. I retired from the Senior Intelligence Service, so I was relatively senior. And they said, what the hell is going on? Why haven't they treated you? This is a tremendous leadership fail on the part of the agency, which is correct. Because ultimately, as you know, with my 26 years at the agency and as a near...
So there is Mark's experience with what could be Havana syndrome or something like it. Now this, I failed to bring this up on the show. I remember seeing it on Twitter, and I don't know, I just didn't get to it. But we should get to it now. Better late than never. It's a terrible story. Very sad story. Let me just X out these ads that are trying to MK Ultra me as I speak. This is from the Daily Mail, January 30th of this year. First Havana syndrome victim dies after mysterious weapon exposure. Michael Beck, the first person to report symptoms later linked to Havana syndrome, has died at age 65. The retired National Security Agency, so that's NSA, if you don't know, I'm sure you do though, officer passed away on January 25th while out shopping, his daughter said. The exact cause of death has not yet been determined. He is survived by his wife of 40 years, Rita Sasala, and also leaves behind his children, Ryan Lewis, Reagan Gabrielle Beck, and Grant Michael Beck. Beck, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at 45, claimed the condition resulted from exposure to a directed energy weapon during a 1996 overseas mission, decades before Havana syndrome was officially recognized. Havana, make sure it's a recording here, okay? Havana syndrome, first reported publicly in 2016 by U.S. diplomats and intelligence personnel in Cuba, is a mysterious neurological condition marked by severe headache. Okay, you know this. Despite battling his illness and receiving little support from the government, sounds familiar, Beck remained with the NSA until 2016, when his health forced him to step down. In 2017, Beck told investigators he believed a weaponized microwave attack was slowly killing him, a claim that has fueled ongoing debate over the syndrome's origins. Imagine like knowing that there's something happening to you. You just can't explain, and everyone thinks you're crazy. It makes you think of what I was telling you the other day about Hemingway, telling all his friends, I think the CIA is following me. It's kind of driving him crazy. Then he died. Well, he took his life. Years go by, and lo and behold, turns out the CIA was following him. Don't discredit the people who sound crazy. I mean, some people are just crazy. Look, I get it. But I think a lot of people, sometimes they're just a little too early to be believed by even their own friends and family. So Beck's case became a focal point in the ongoing investigation into Havana syndrome, drawing attention to the mysterious illness affecting dozens of U.S. government personnel overseas. Very sad. I mean, this guy, it looked like it really destroyed his life. Family man, had his kids, and then gets Parkinson's. Experts suspect that Havana syndrome may be caused by exposure to a type of directed energy weapon which transmits concentrated energy toward a target. The fog has since cleared since I last pointed. So does the directed energy weapon has moved the fake clouds out of the way to now have a direct shot. The most commonly considered form is pulsed microwave radiation, which can penetrate soft tissue and potentially affect nerves and brain function without leaving visible marks. It's a lot like the blow dart heart attack gun they had, which was supposed to not leave any trace of any poison. I forget which fish they used to make the poison. But that's what they used, and there'd be no trace of it, afterwards. And obviously, they've perfected that, and they moved on to other things, whether it's DEWs hovering in the sky or other types of weapons they can just shoot you at with a laser, High intensity exposure is believed to cause headaches. Okay, we've heard the symptoms enough. Some researchers have also considered ultrasonic or sonic devices which use sound waves above the range of human hearing. Any suspected device would need to be covert, portable, and capable of targeting individuals across rooms or buildings, likely using pulsed emissions rather than continuous waves. While investigations are ongoing, no device has been publicly confirmed, and much of the research remains classified. Scientists caution that other factors such as environmental toxins, infections, or stress could also contribute to the symptoms reported by the affected government personnel. Beck earned a degree in the administration of justice from Pennsylvania State University in 1983 and began his career with the U.S. Secret Service. At the same college, I have to go back and listen, that Mark mentioned. In 1987, 2 years after his marriage, he transitioned to the NSA, where he would spend the bulk of his professional life. And we know the NSA are just very good to us, and they do not spy at all. Then in 1996, he and another agent, Charles Goubet, were sent to a hostile country to assess the security of a facility abroad, according to the New York Times. The mission was to determine if the country had installed listening devices in a U.S. facility under construction. The classified information in question prohibited Beck from disclosing any details about where he was, what the information was, or any other identifying details of that mission. What year was it? 1996? I mean, what do you guys think? Is it Russia or somewhere in South America, perhaps? During the second day of the mission, Beck said he and Goubet encountered a technical threat at the site. Speaking to The Guardian, he said, "I woke up and I was really, really groggy. I was not able to wake up routinely. It was not a normal event. I had several cups of coffee, and that didn't do a thing to get me going." That'd be a good thing for a coffee brand. You know, Folgers, to help you wake up from Havana syndrome, fogginess. You can do Folgers and do like the old school. They had a great theme song back in the day, great little jingle. It took about 10 years before Beck began feeling unwell, and a visit to a neurologist determined he had developed Parkinson's. Parkinson's disease is known to cause a deterioration of brain cells, though scientists do not fully understand why this occurs. So can you imagine? I think a lot of cancer is obviously man-made stuff that they can give you, and a lot of the poisons that they want us to eat on, even the bad bread here in this poison planet. But also I think they can cause different problems in you that will appear to be like a disease that they've got a name for, right? But they don't fully understand, like Parkinson's, but it's the result of a direct energy weapon. It's a lot like the papers we saw that were released out of the latest JFK files release from last year, when we could see the CIA talking to each other about, well, we could poison their whole crops. We could kill all the crops, but they'll never know it was us. They'll never know it was poison. They'll think it was some act of God. They'll think it was nature with whatever they did, which is insane. You know, it reminds me of, this is a story. I used to work at a golf course for many years. I was the deli guy. And maybe this is another one of those jobs I haven't talked about on this show. I don't think I've mentioned the golf course job, but I worked a deli for many years, and it was all right. You know, I liked working on the golf course. I liked driving the golf carts at the end of the day, taking the governors off, going super fast, and I never really played golf all that much, although I have here and there. It's fun. Not really my thing. But anyway, one employee from the maintenance crew got really upset, really pissed off at the manager for something. I don't know what happened. So he concocted some poison, and he sprinkled the poison on every green on the whole course, all 18 greens. And by the next morning, everything's brown. So not me. I didn't go and investigate this, but they could tell immediately these were poisoned. Man-made poison did this, obviously. So it's just funny to think about, like, you can, if you know your things, if you're like a biologist, whatever you are with this stuff, you can tell, like, this was done intentionally by a human being. But the CIA in the 60s, they were able to do things like that couldn't be detected. Crazy. It was crazy. They had to do all these discounts for people. They thought, no one wants to golf here because all the brown greens. Massive discounts. It was a wild time. It was around the same time that big black ants infected the soda fountain that was in front of the counter here where I was working the deli. And they just, no matter what they did, the ants kept finding a way into the tube. So when, and this is kind of like near areas like we had on one side of us, a rather poor area, which is closer to the town where I grew up in Highland Falls, which it was both. There was people who had money, houses down by the river, and people didn't have a lot of money, some trailer parks, and they were near like West Point and then Garrison right across the river. So there's like a wide range of people that could all golf here. But a lot of the people who golf have lots of money. And they just funny thing about these guys who are really wealthy and all their nice little golf outfits that were ridiculous. And going to get their soda out of the soda fountain and then just big black ants spilling out into their cups. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. The guy, we all tried cleaning it up and taking the thing apart no matter what they did. That is a tangent. So apologies, but true life. Beck told, genetics may play a role, but Parkinson's does not follow family lines in the same predictable way as many other illnesses. Beck told the Washington Post that, to his knowledge, no one else in his family had ever had the disease. In 2012, Beck ran into Goubet at the NSA headquarters in Fort Meade, Maryland, and Goubet, then 60, moved with a stiff, awkward gait that immediately caught Beck's attention. They are experimenting on all of us constantly. Some of us just get it worse than others. Hands down. Hands down. Okay, and there's another big Havana syndrome thing. We've gone over this. He was slumped over and walking really awkwardly. I went up to him and said, "What's going on?" And Beck, that's what Beck told The Guardian. Goubet then told Beck he had also been diagnosed with Parkinson's. A decade after his diagnosis, Beck... So you understand they're going to be doing this very similar thing for various reasons, whether it's direct energy weapons that have hurt civilians that we don't know about, but also some injectable things that happened in the past few years that the doctors will just say they'll attribute to something else. Your heart just got really big all of a sudden because of climate change, perhaps. World, it has gone mad, but it's always been mad. You know this. A decade after his diagnosis, Beck obtained a classified report that he believed detailed the use of microwave attack against him and fellow officer Goubet while they stayed in adjacent hotel rooms. The National Security Agency confirms that there is intelligence information from 2012 associating the hostile country to which Mr. Beck traveled in the late 1990s with a high-powered microwave system weapon that may have the ability to weaken, intimidate, or kill an enemy over time and without leaving evidence, the report said. It could basically say, we have evidence of a discombobulator. I was sick in the stomach and shocked when I read that report, Mr. Beck told the Washington Post in 2017. I am familiar with other things this hostile country does, and it just felt raw and unfair. So what are we thinking? It's either China or Russia. Radiation refers broadly to the release of energy, including low-energy radio waves and microwaves. While microwaves are less strongly linked to cancer and higher frequency waves, their potential effects on the nervous system remain a subject of debate. Convinced that the incident had caused lasting damage, Beck filed a claim with the Department of Labor asserting that his health had been irreversibly harmed on the job. Then, more government employees came forward to report similar symptoms after being deployed to Cuba, Russia, and Canada, along with at least one case from Washington, D.C. How long until they start saying you got to get a vaccine for Havana syndrome? It'll just be like a tinfoil hat, but inside your skull, man. You just got to do it inside your skull, man. Between 2016 and 2018, over 200 U.S. government employees and diplomats reported experiencing similar symptoms, with the majority of cases linked to staff stationed at the U.S. Embassy in Havana. The Foreign Policy Research Institute estimates that 1,500 American officials have suffered mysterious neurological injuries like Beck since 2016. The case drew national attention from both the media and Congress, sparking scientific investigations. However, the research produced conflicting results. A study conducted by the University of Pennsylvania found data supporting the possibility of a direct energy weapon attack, while a separate investigation by the National Institutes of Health concluded there was no evidence linking such a device to the reported illnesses. I believe that is also the newer version of the institution that performed the Tuskegee syphilis experiment that we talked about yesterday. A rather trustworthy institution up there with the CDC, the WHO, stuff like that, WEF, FDA, ATF, CIA, FBI, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, you name it. The exact details of the device linked to Havana syndrome remain classified, though reports have suggested that certain components may have been produced in Russia. And beneath this article is an ad for a hotel. It'd be funny if it was for a hotel in Russia or Cuba. It doesn't say. So we have that. Sad story from that man, Beck, dying. Okay. Now, this. From the National Security Archive.gw.edu. The Moscow Signals Declassified Microwave Diplomacy 1967 through 1977. Y'all seen this before? Hello, everybody, by the way. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate y'all on this lovely Tuesday night. The sky is now blue. See that? I've willed that into existence. Well, at this point, this hour, the sky is dark. I'm assuming most of us are in a place where the sky is dark, unless you are on Mars, where it's red. Declassified records detailed diplomatic efforts to end microwave radiation directed at Moscow Embassy, Kissinger to Dobrynin. We are trying to keep the thing quiet. You could give me a radiation treatment. Forward to Brezhnev. Microwaves pose unacceptable potential hazards to the health of our employees. Okay. So this was written in 2022, and now we're going to go back to 1975. On December 9th, 1975, as Secretary of State Henry Kissinger prepared to travel to Moscow for arms control talks, he placed an urgent phone call to Soviet Ambassador Anatoly Dobrynin in Washington. I want to talk to you about the signal, Kissinger told Dobrynin. That beam you are beaming into our embassy in Moscow. Maybe you could turn it off until I get there. Amid diplomatic banter about how the Soviets could give me a radiation treatment, Kissinger issued a clear warning. The microwave radiation that the Soviets had been aiming daily at the U.S. Embassy building for over a decade threatened to become a major scandal in U.S.-Soviet relations. We really are sitting on it here, but too many people know about it, Kissinger said. We will catch hell unless we can say something is happening to stop it. Transcripts of Kissinger's calls to Dobrynin, obtained under the Freedom of Information Act by the National Security Archive, are among a special collection of documents posted today on the Moscow Signal scandal, recording to years of secret diplomacy to press the Soviets to terminate the daily microwave transmissions directed at the U.S. Embassy building. It's nothing new. I mean, they make it sound like it's new with these new articles, but this has been going on for decades. High-level U.S. efforts to press Soviet leaders to halt the radiation activity began in 1967 and continued under four administrations into the Carter era. The microwave transmissions, believed to be related to bugging devices hidden in the embassy walls, continued for decades after they were first detected when U.S. Chancery opened in the early 1950s. Today's posting on microwave diplomacy 1967 through 1977 includes a number of noteworthy records published here for the first time. Among them, this is correspondence between President Gerald Ford and Soviet Premier Leonid Brezhnev. These transmissions have created levels of radiation within the embassy which may, in the opinion of our medical authorities, represent a hazard to the health of the American families living and working in that building, Ford wrote to the Soviet Premier in 1975. In response, the Soviet Premier says, let me find it, the electromagnetic field in the area of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow was of industrial origin. He did, however, invite the U.S. specialists to come to Moscow and meet with Soviet officials to compare measurements of the radiation, which he insisted was several times lower than the standard officially recognized in the United States as not hazardous for human health. Yeah, and you should also listen to the people who screwed up Chernobyl and tried to hide that. Secret negotiations between Scowcroft, great name, Scowcroft, aide William Hyland, and Soviet official Yuli Vorontsov. The documents disclose secret talks toward an agreement under which the U.S. would dismantle its surveillance shed on the roof of the embassy and return to the Soviets. Well, I'm going to move on from that. There's a whole lot here. It's an interesting website, though, at the National Archive. Sorry, the name of the website is National Security Archive. Great. Super great. Y'all good? Y'all still out there? Great. That's awesome. Let's see what we have next here. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, indeed. Let me just make sure these links are working. I'm going to pull up an article while I'm talking here. But this is going to be from... where I first saw it was open source intel on Twitter. And... What article do I want to pull from here? We'll do this. Okay. More from Meta. So this is where I first saw it. Meta has secured a patent for an AI system designed to simulate deceased users by analyzing their past data, enabling the account to continue posting, sending messages, and even conducting video calls in their behavioral style. And the great post from whoever this Alex Zieg is, he says, dead internet theory was supposed to be a conspiracy, not a product roadmap. Okay, we'll dig a little bit more into this from Dexter 2. I don't know how you say that website name. You guys know I'm not known for my pronunciations, okay? I apologize. I just learned how to read. I'm a new clone. They can only do so much with me so quick. Meta patents AI that takes over a dead person's account to keep posting and chatting. This to me is so gross. We've seen celebrities sell their likeness in perpetuity to different companies so they can use AI forever. I know, maybe at some point, I'm going to ask this person to come on and talk about it, but I know someone who's an actor. They'll probably come on at some point, and they were approached by some AI company to sell their likeness to a dating thing. So people could date the AI version of them. The actor refused, which I think is commendable because I think it's disgusting. Obviously, there's a lot who do it, but this is happening at all different levels, whether it's celebrities selling their likeness, their soul to an AI company so they can be used forever. But Meta has been granted a patent outlining an AI system capable of simulating a user's activity on social media, including continuing to post after their death. The filing, granted in late December and originally submitted in 2023, describes how a large language model could replicate a person's online behavior using their past data. So basically, Joe Biden, the Joe Biden we had as president, was basically this. One of them. There's many different Joe Bidens, but one of the versions was this. As reported by Business Insider, this includes posts, comments, chats, voice messages, likes, and other interactions, allowing the system to respond to content, publish updates, or message other users in a way that mirrors the original account holder. Well, Democrats will love this because they already use the dead to vote, and now they can actually support their dead voters by having them post about their favorite politicians before and leading up to an election. According to the patent, the model may be used for simulating the user when the user is absent from the social networking system. That's a nice way of saying when the user is dead, including cases where the person is on a long break or deceased. The filing notes that the impact is much more severe and permanent if the user has died and they cannot return to the platform. The technology appears designed with Meta's own platforms like Facebook and Instagram in mind. By analyzing user-specific data, the system could reconstruct a digital persona that continues interacting on the platform as if the person were still active. So it's going to be like digital Weekend at Bernie's. You see how easy this is going to be for people, criminals, scammers, to like, I don't want to give the idea, but since we're here, doing a weekend at Bernie's type situation where like they have a deceased person at home, and like I don't remember that article. We might have gone over it like a year ago, where it was somewhere in South America. They were doing the weekend at Bernie's thing. They had the mom or someone in a wheelchair, dead. Went to the bank, tried to open up a bank account, all this stuff. There's video of the person putting the dead person in a cab, all that kind of crazy stuff. But now you can support your dead person, the illusion of the life of this dead person, by making them like their friends' Facebook posts and even commenting, maybe even videoing. You also realize how easy it's going to be to scam people now. I remember being in Florida and visiting my grandma and her sister, and her younger sister, this would be my great aunt, must be in her late 80s now. This probably happened when she was early 80s. She got scammed easily by people calling, pretending to be her son. So they did some amount of research to be like, she has sons, called, saying the name, and to her, I guess it sounded like her son, and she sent money. And they do a lot. I remember being down there, and there's a lot of articles you could look up about those types of scams. And that is a very vulnerable population of people. The elderly, whom I love dearly, but they are susceptible to this post-reality world that the criminals can use to make their jobs easier, their jobs in crime much easier. They can replicate voices now. They can replicate faces. They can create platforms, do all these things. So it does not just be I'm a king in Africa. I need you to cash this check for me. Despite the implications, Meta says the patent does not mean the feature is coming. Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg always tells the truth as well, especially under oath. A spokesperson stated that the company has no plans to move forward with this example, adding that patents are often filed to protect ideas or concepts that may never be developed into products. Highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. Also, perhaps, since I think a lot of these people like Zuckerberg are trying to hop on board their godless Noah's Ark of a breakaway civilization after the cataclysmic event that they think might be happening to humans that they want to survive and then repopulate Earth. You can imagine how having all the data from everyone can help them repopulate their new dystopia post-cataclysmic event by using all this information that they've scraped off the old internet to create clones or other such things in that future. Just putting it out there. However, the concept of AI replicas of deceased users has surfaced before in Meta's broader discussions about the technology. In 2023, an interview with Lex Friedman, who happens to have been built by Elon Musk, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said there may be ways for AI systems to help people. There may be ways for AI systems to help promote, interact people with, suggesting Meta will eventually have the capacity to create AI replicas of individuals. He emphasized that such systems should require the person's consent, saying it should ultimately be your call. And if you're dead, I guess we will have you sign that paperwork from the grave. Did you hear that crow? I don't know if the mic picked it up. The idea isn't unique to Meta. Similar tools have already sparked debate online, with startups launching apps that let users create interactive digital avatars of deceased relatives, drawing comparisons to dystopian scenarios portrayed in shows like Black Mirror. While Meta insists the patent is only conceptual, the filing highlights how quickly AI-driven digital identity technology is evolving and the ethical questions that could follow it if it ever becomes real. Now, do you remember this? This is all allegedly now. The stuff I read previous had quotes from Meta people. There was an article written about it. They were talking, they quoted Mark Zuckerberg. This is allegedly now, okay? But maybe you'll remember this. It's from 3 years ago when an alleged Meta employee said this. This is an alleged Meta employee whistleblower from 3 years ago. Whenever I do this, I think of this in Glorious Bastards. Great scene. This is what he wrote, allegedly. I'm a Meta insider working on Project Lazarus. The people who've read their Bibles will understand now the comparison now with the dead, Lazarus having been raised from the dead. And now we're talking about AI, digital resurrections. We are building an AI that can take over a deceased person's social media accounts and continue making relevant posts as if that person is still alive. This includes age-progressed photos, interacting with other people. That's really creepy. Remember that app everyone was using years back, not that long ago, when they were like, look at this is what I would look like if I were 80. They were doing it to understand how to build these things. Don't use these technologies. Just don't do them. Because they're always you're just training the machines. Don't like the CAPTCHAs. I know sometimes we got to do them because I got on the website, do something. The CAPTCHAs are just training the machines. That's why I take my son to the arcade to play Terminator as often as can, and also the real shooting range. But Terminator to understand how to destroy the machines when the time comes. This is true. I just did it on Sunday. This includes age. Okay, you read that. Interacting with other people's content and everything else needed so that person continues on in the digital realm after physical death. Again, this does connect to the idea that we talk about quite often on the show. Silicon Valley and these tech vampires, everything they do is an abomination of their form of God, of their rejection of God, and everything. Whether it's naming all their devices, their big new first-in-line devices, Eve. We had the first atom bomb test called the Trinity. It's always them, the apple having the bite taken out of it. I know it doesn't say apple in the Bible, it's a fruit, but you know what I mean. Everyone knows what they mean when they have the apple with the bite taken out of it. They're always developing their own dystopian remix of religion. And with this, it is their digital resurrection. This is the future, if they have their way. This will be like this as they're reading it now. I will continue in a second. This is their poor man's version of a resurrection, so you can appear to be immortal, right? And maybe tomorrow we're going to get into immortality in other ways. I already have things lined up for that, which then leads into transhumanist experimentation connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe we'll take this is a little break from Epstein today, okay? Maybe we all need it. But the tech elites are actually trying to be immortal, whether it's uploading their consciousness into a computer like something Ray Kurzweil would want to do, or doing the biohacking, which not all biohacking is bad, but the stuff that there's creepy stuff here, like the Ambrosia, Peter Thiel, blood stuff, that's all weird to me, and I don't agree with it. But this is that kind of poor man's form of being forever, of living forever. We were originally told this would be a service offered to people struggling with the loss of loved ones and people who had missing children. I think that's a very bad way to help someone in grief. We all have. How long till TPUSA does this with Charlie? Honestly, oh my goodness. Honestly, now that I say it, I'm surprised I haven't even done a hologram of him yet. You heard it here first. It seemed like a decent idea, this alleged Meta whistleblower says 3 years ago. Things are getting weird now. And I'm actually having second thoughts about what this is actually going to be used for. Again, I'll remind you guys, I just recently, the other day, read the resignation letter. Was it from Anthropic, the safety guy at Anthropic, saying we've crossed the line and he's going to go now and just write poetry. The AI is extremely capable of impersonating people. It doesn't take as much initial input as one might think to train the AI how a certain person interacts with the digital world. It's very convincing. An entire island of people could go missing, and with little to no downtime, the AI could take over all of their social media, and the world wouldn't have a clue that life wasn't just continuing as usual. A lot of the project is becoming more compartmentalized. Things have taken a dark turn, it feels like. They've forbidden communication between people working on different things. Something isn't right, and I don't know what I should do. I'm not going to post any personally identifiable information, but I will try to answer questions that won't expose my role within the project. So it seems like there's some veracity, right, to what he was saying, because he was a little concerned. Before we go, I'm going to pull up something I retweeted last night. Seems to be fitting, and we'll finish up here. This is from Nick Hinton. He's a great person to follow on Twitter. So first, I'll say he shared this screenshot about Claude. Claude AI was told it would be switched off. It was ready to blackmail and murder engineer to avoid that. And remember, I think we played the Anthropic lady from Anthropic talking about Anthropic. It's the same deal here, being ready to kill. So a lot of stuff coming out of Anthropic lately. Call it smart or dangerous, Anthropic has again confirmed that its Claude AI can veer off the rails. The company notes this in its safety report for the latest Claude 4.6. Earlier, Claude 4.5 was willing to blackmail and even harm an engineer to avoid shutdown. So Nick Hinton posted that with this quote. I guess we'll do just a little bit of Epstein tonight. Nick says, my favorite conspiracy theory is the idea that AI is behind the Epstein files release and is blackmailing the elite to take over the government. Hence, some of the photos looking like deepfakes. I mean, it's worth considering that something like Palantir is like re-Epsteining the elite. So I believe they were obviously involved in all this stuff. And maybe the AI has taken over. And like, we're going to put it all out there and we're going to make it worse. And the government's now ours. I mean, I think it's possible. The AI is the new boss that you have to Terminator, Skynet. And it's slowly taking over. But I thought that was fascinating. We'll leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will have a lot more tomorrow. We'll talk about Epstein. I have some Epstein stuff. We'll go into some health stuff, immortality, human experimentation, more human experimentation. It's always a fun one. And again, you guys rule. Thank you very much for showing up. Thank you so much for liking and commenting and subscribing. Please do leave a comment, hit the like. You know, that does help us quite a bit. We appreciate it. And I hope you have a great night. I will see you tomorrow.